The morning of November 17th, 1874 was cold and clear over the South Atlantic. The vast expanse of water stretched out endlessly, a serene and tranquil scene that belied the events that were about to unfold. The air was crisp and the sky was painted in hues of pink and orange as the first light of dawn began to break. The sun was just coming up, making long shadows on the waves. The gentle lapping of the water against the hull of the ship was the only sound that broke the silence of the early morning. It was a moment of peace and calm, a brief respite before the chaos that was to come. For the 479 people on the ship Cospatrick, sailing to a new life in New Zealand, this normal day would soon turn into a nightmare. The ship was filled with families, each with their own hopes and dreams, looking forward to a fresh start in a new land. They had endured a long and arduous journey, but their spirits were high as they neared their destination. The Cospatrick, a big sailing ship with 3 masts, was moving quickly through the water. The crew worked diligently, ensuring that the ship stayed on course and that everything was in order. The passengers, unaware of the impending disaster, went about their daily routines, some enjoying the fresh sea air on deck, while others remained below, tending to their children or preparing meals. On board were families hoping for a better future, their few belongings packed below. They had left behind everything they knew, driven by the promise of a new beginning. The journey had been long and challenging, but the thought of the opportunities that awaited them kept their spirits high. Little did they know their dreams would soon be shattered. They didn't know their dreams would soon be destroyed by a huge fire. The fire started suddenly, spreading quickly through the wooden structure of the ship. Panic ensued as passengers and crew alike tried to contain the blaze, but their efforts were in vain. The flames consumed everything in their path, turning the once hopeful journey into a desperate fight for survival. The Cospatrick, once a symbol of hope, would become their watery grave. As the ship burned, it began to sink, taking with it the dreams and lives of those on board. The cold, clear waters of the South Atlantic became a silent witness to the tragedy, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictability of fate. The story of the Cospatrick is a poignant chapter in maritime history, a tale of hope turned to despair in the blink of an eye. The Cospatrick, built in 1856 in Sunderland, England, was a marvel of its time. Sunderland, known for its bustling shipyards, was a hub of innovation and craftsmanship. The shipbuilders there were renowned for their skill and dedication, and the Cospatrick was a testament to their expertise. The Cospatrick was a good example of Victorian shipbuilding. During the Victorian era, shipbuilding was undergoing a transformation. The introduction of iron hulls and steam power was revolutionizing maritime travel, making ships stronger and more reliable. Made of iron and weighing over 2,000 tons, she was a modern ship for her time. Her iron hull provided greater durability and safety compared to the wooden ships that had dominated the seas for centuries. The Cospatrick was designed to withstand the harshest conditions at sea. First called the British King, she was later renamed the Cospatrick. The renaming of ships was a common practice, often reflecting changes in ownership or purpose. The name Cospatrick carried with it a sense of nobility and strength. She carried people and goods on long journeys. The Cospatrick was not just a cargo ship, she was a lifeline for many. She transported goods that were essential for trade and commerce, and she carried passengers who were seeking new opportunities in distant lands. People wanting a better life crowded onto her decks, their hopes packed in trunks and bags. Emigrants from all walks of life boarded the Cospatrick, leaving behind their homes and families in search of a brighter future. The decks were filled with the sounds of different languages and the hopes of new beginnings. The Cospatrick had sailed successfully to Australia and India before this trip to New Zealand. Her voyages were often long and arduous, but she had a reputation for reliability. The crew and passengers trusted her to carry them safely across the vast oceans. But even the best sailors and strongest ships can't avoid bad luck. The sea is unpredictable, and despite all precautions, disaster can strike at any moment. The story of the Cospatrick is a reminder of the perils that sailors and passengers face during their voyages, and the thin line between dreams and despair. The Cospatrick left Gravesend, England on September 11, 1874, full of passengers and crew. Most of the 429 emigrants were from England and Ireland. They brought their hopes, their few belongings, and their worries about leaving home. Captain Alexander Elmsley, an experienced sailor, was in charge. The first few days went smoothly and the ship sailed south quickly. As days turned into weeks, everyone got used to life on the ship. Passengers laughed and told stories, and the sounds echoed through the sails. The night of November 17, 1874, started normally on the Cospatrick. The ship, a majestic 19th century sailing vessel, was on its voyage from London to New Zealand, carrying emigrants seeking a new life. The passengers, filled with hope and dreams, settled into their routines as the ship sailed smoothly through the calm waters. The ship, lit by the moon, sailed south, and the waves rocked people to sleep. The gentle rocking of the ship and the serene night sky created a sense of peace and tranquility. Families huddled together in their cabins, children dreaming of the adventures that awaited them in a new land. But deep inside the ship, something terrible was starting. Unbeknownst to the passengers and crew, a small spark had ignited in the cargo hold where flammable materials were stored. The fire began to smolder, slowly gaining strength as it fed on the ship's supplies. No one knew a fire had started in the cargo hold. The thick wooden walls of the ship concealed the growing danger, and the crew remained unaware as they went about their duties. The fire, hidden from sight, continued to spread, inching closer to disaster. Just before midnight, people noticed smoke. A faint smell of burning began to permeate the air, and wisps of smoke started to curl through the cracks in the floorboards. Passengers stirred in their sleep, some waking to the unsettling scent. It crept through the lower decks, waking people up. The smoke thickened, filling the lower decks with a choking haze. Panic began to set in as passengers realized something was terribly wrong. The once peaceful night was now filled with the sounds of coughing and cries of alarm. Then, flames burst out, spreading quickly. The fire, now fully unleashed, roared to life, consuming everything in its path. Flames licked at the wooden beams and the heat became unbearable. The ship, once a safe haven, was now a blazing inferno. Panic filled the ship as everyone realized they were in a nightmare. The crew and passengers scrambled to escape the flames, but the fire spread with terrifying speed. The corridors filled with smoke, and the heat drove people back, trapping them in a deadly maze. People, many still in their nightclothes, ran from their cabins, scared and confused. In the chaos, families were separated, and the cries of children echoed through the burning ship. The once orderly vessel was now a scene of utter chaos and despair, as everyone fought for their lives against the relentless flames. As the fire raged, the people on the Cospatrick had a terrible choice: burn or drown. The fire, fed by the wood and cargo, spread fast. In the chaos there were acts of bravery and desperation. Parents searched for their children, their calls lost in the roar of the fire. The crew tried to launch the lifeboats, but the flames made it hard. Some people jumped into the dark water. The lifeboats, not nearly big enough for everyone, filled up quickly. As the Cospatrick burned against the night sky, those in the lifeboats faced new horrors. The boats were too full and had little food or water. The survivors, many hurt or burned, huddled together. The huge oceans stretched around them, showing how alone they were. Days and nights passed as they fought hunger, thirst, and the cold. Some held on to hope, while others gave up. Food and water ran low. Acts of kindness gave small moments of hope. The news of the Cospatrick disaster shocked Britain. Newspapers told sad stories of loss and survival, making people angry and demanding answers. The disaster showed how dangerous sea travel could be. An inquiry investigated the fire and what happened. It found problems with fire safety, not enough lifeboats, and poor crew training. The Cospatrick disaster led to important changes in shipping. New rules made passenger ships safer. The Cospatrick disaster reminds us that the sea is unpredictable and life is fragile. The tragedy shows how strong and how vulnerable people can be. We remember the Cospatrick and the people who died through memorials and stories. In Aberdeenshire, Scotland, a stone obelisk remembers the victims. Survivors' stories tell us about the horrors of that night. The Cospatrick disaster teaches us to learn from the past to make sea travel safer. The sad story of the Cospatrick reminds us how dangerous the sea can be. The ship, once a symbol of hope, became a fiery grave, showing how fragile life is. The stories of those who died and those who lived show human suffering and strength. The Cospatrick disaster led to big changes in shipping. We can't replace the lives lost, but the Cospatrick's legacy lives on in these changes. The Cospatrick story is still important for people who study maritime history. It's a warning, a reminder that the sea demands respect and carefulness.